Welcome to the Culinary Treasure Podcast. I'm Steven Shomler, your host, back here in Bozeman, Montana, a town I fell in love with. I've been coming here every year now for 3 years, and just so many incredible stories here. If you want to see all of my Bozeman-centric content, you can go to adventuresinbozeman.com for travel articles, food articles, beer podcasts, and more importantly, for this episode, culinary podcast episodes. The first time I came to Bozeman, I did research to figure out what are the iconic places I have to go, because, maybe I'll never come back. And one of the places I knew that I absolutely had to go was Granny's Gourmet Donuts. I love the donuts. They were amazing. My hometown, Portland, we have some incredible artisanal donuts. I fell in love with Granny's Donuts. And here I am now, 3 years later. That was 2018. It's now 2020. And I'm sitting with Robert McWilliams, the founder, the gentleman who makes the donut magic happen here at Granny's Gourmet Donuts. Good morning, Robert. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you for asking.
I am so delighted to tell your story. I literally, as I wrote literally in my article, when you come to Bozeman, you have to go to Granny's Gourmet Donuts. It's one of the things you have to do. But questions I ask on all of my podcasts, because kind of like the people's early geography kind of shapes them. And yours is even really interesting because I think your early journey impacts, why you're here in Bozeman. But you went to two different, where were you born first?
I was born in Sherman, Texas, which is almost Oklahoma.
And you went to a couple different high schools in your high school years.
Yeah, I went to Lakin Heath High School in Mildenhall, England, and I went to Rancho High School in Las Vegas, Nevada. There was like half Mexican and half black and about 10 scared white honor students. It was one of those.
And what was the mascot there?
The Rams.
The Rams. Yes. And then your dad was in the Air Force, and I'm grateful for his service. I'm grateful for people that serve in the military. Growing up, where are some of the places you lived? Because you moved around a lot as a child.
Well, we started in Sherman, Texas, and then we moved to Yokota, Japan. I was in Japan in 1964, and it was still rebuilding from the year. And I have to say the Japanese people were incredibly gracious and polite to such a young child. And I really enjoyed spending 4 years in Japan. Then after Japan, we went to the Pacific Northwest to Tacoma, Washington.
Lewis
Complex.
Yep.
It was called McCord Air Force Base.
Yeah, McCord Air Force Base. Yep.
Back then, yeah.
Yep.
And then after McCord, we went to Abilene, Texas, which is in the center of Texas. And then after Abilene, we went to Biloxi, Mississippi for training. And then we went to England after that. And then after England, we ended up in Las Vegas, Nevada, Nellis Air Force Base, where my father worked on F-111s.
So you came to Bozeman in 1978 to go to school at MSU. So you're roughly 18, 19, 17 years old, somewhere in there. But 4 years earlier, 1974, you're a young teenager. Tell me about the trip your family took.
Well, part of growing up in a military family is you join Boy Scouts, and I was a Boy Scout, Eagle Scout, and we traveled up from Texas to go to the Scout Jamboree in Idaho. And as we traveled through Montana, going to the Jamboree, I was struck out how beautiful Montana is, and how beautiful, and the mountains are great, and the people are nice, and I thought, this would be a nice place to live. So in 1978, I came here to go to college.
And your sister was already here. That was part of the draw. You'd seen it 4 years earlier. Montana was beautiful, and your sister was already here at MSU.
Yes.
And what did you major in?
Beer and girls.
Okay, so given that answer, I have to ask, because it's a place near and dear to my heart. Did you ever go to the Hofbrauhaus?
Oh, yeah. I love the Hof.
I think it's a great place to get a good, bad dive bar burger, and I love the Hof.
Yeah, the nice thing about the Hof is you could be sitting next to a renowned physicist or a dirtbag, and they're both nice. So, I'll take that experience. They don't get too highfalutin at the Hofbrau.
That's exactly right. And then you've spent most of your life as a professional cook. That's what you did. And tell me where and you opened what became Granny's in 2002. But going back earlier to your cooking journey, tell me about your grandma and how all of that inspired the cook that you became.
Well, my grandmother was a nurse, and she was in Louisiana, and she inherited a lot of the great Cajun tradition of cooking for people. They just have a marvelous culinary tradition down there. And she was sort of the neighborhood cook. She would just feed all the kids that needed feeding. It was in a poorer part of town, and she would just take care of everyone that needed taken care of. And she just was really a crackerjack cook. We used to go and collect blackberries for her, and then she would make us a fresh blackberry cobbler from the blackberries. She was a marvelous cook and a generous cook too, and I get a lot of inspiration from that.
Any other dishes that she cooked that you remember that you loved?
She liked jambalaya. She made a really nice jambalaya, and she made boudin, homemade boudin, which is a sausage.
Incredible sausage, yeah.
Yeah.
rice in there, yeah. Yeah, lucky enough to have spent some time in Eunice. I love me some good Cajun cooking.
They know how to cook.
It's phenomenal. And as my friend Mr. Fontenot says, don't go north of Turkey Creek because there ain't Cajuns up there. I'm never quite sure what he means by that, but he says it, and I just love it. All right. So part of that journey in your grandma and that cooking and your love of cooking, go to Hofbrauhaus and there's all this stuff hanging in the ceilings. I had a podcast with Don and it was kind of like, going to a museum because he just sat in the chair as we recorded the podcast and he just pointed to things and talked about them. And in here, some people may miss it, but you've got aprons. Talk to me about these aprons.
Well, I'm inspired by a different kind of culinary tradition. The tradition I'm inspired by are women cooks. A lot of these aprons were worn by women that spent all day in the kitchen. And you can just see by the aprons, the kind of aprons they had, the big, huge aprons that covered you fully. They were, you got up and you started cooking and cleaning and feeding the chickens and lighting the wood stove. And you spent a lot of time in the kitchen, especially because they had big families back then. They had to do a lot of cooking. And you didn't have a lot of pre-prepared food, so you were cooking from scratch most of your cooking. And there weren't many restaurants, and you didn't go out very much. So a lot of this country's culinary heritage is in the home. And it was by women cooks that just were crackerjack cooks. I mean, if you're going to take your brownies to the bake sale for the church, you're going to bring some good brownies because you're competing with that witch down the street, and you know that you're going to make some damn good brownies there. So a lot of the culinary heritage that I want to emulate would be the culinary heritage of these women cooks. They were so generous and so open and so creative. A lot of times we focus our restaurants on ethnicities like Mexican or Chinese, and that's cool too. But a lot of American cooking that I like to focus on is good old American home cooking.
That is beautiful. I love that. Any particular aprons you want to tell a story about?
Well, I have one here. There's a green and yellow one that's a full apron. That means it's more like a smock, and it covers you completely because, again, you're going to be cooking all day long, and you didn't necessarily have a washing machine, so you would wear your clothes, but you would just wear your aprons and wash your aprons more and then your clothes less because you were washing by hand a lot of times. And there's a farm wife from North Dakota named Margot that wore that apron, and she was apparently a really good cook, and just proud to have it on my wall. I have other aprons that are half aprons, and they're more the 1950s. Margot was the 1930s. In the 1950s, you had more of the half apron, and those are more for decorative. People don't wear aprons as much as they used to because we have washing machines and because there's a stigma to be wearing aprons. But I love these aprons. I wish they could tell stories because they're just amazing, creative, beautiful objects that reflect a beautiful culinary tradition.
And for those that are listening to the podcast, I'm going to put a picture. If you go to culinarytreasurepodcast.com to this episode, I'll have photos of these aprons and photos of that of Margot's apron, 1930s North Dakota. So you can see it with your own eyes, not just hear the story, but get to see it. It's quite beautiful. Thank you for sharing that part of your story. It's very moving to me. So 2002, roughly, you've been cooking for a long time, whole time in Bozeman. By the way, you moved to Bozeman. Like you said, you majored in beer and girls, and then you've never left Bozeman. You stayed here. Why?
They haven't kicked me out.
What else about it?
You know, I just like Bozeman. It's just a nice, health, safety, safe community. I know folks here. I'm comfortable here. We're not a big city, but we're big enough that we have cultural events and lectures and cultural things, but we're also small enough that I feel comfortable here.
And is part of the reason that you stayed here is that because of all that moving around we talked about, all those different continents and cities and places you lived in as a child?
Well, Bozeman, there's just nice folks here. You know, it's a nice place to be. And part of it is I was tired of moving around and I wanted a little more stability. But part of it is, I just like Montana's culture. We're not huge. 1 million people live in the whole state, and the state is the size of France. So there's not a lot of people here. I kind of like that too. You know, it used to be you could just get in your car and you'd be alone in a mountain meadow in 20 minutes, and that's kind of nice.
And a lot of people love Bozeman, Montana, but Bozeman in particular, because that's where we're at today, is for the outdoors. Is there any part of the outdoors that really resonates with you that you enjoy?
Well, from where I'm sitting right now, there's 3 blue ribbon trout rivers that you can go fishing in. You can go floating down the Madison, which is one of my favorite things to do. It's really kind of nice to go out there on a hot summer day and lay on an inner tube with a beer in your hand and watch the world go by. And what I like about sitting next to a river like the Madison or the Gallatin or the Jefferson is that it's pretty eternal there. You just kind of sit there and watch the river go, and that's pretty cool.
And speaking of beer, I know we're both fans of Bozeman Brewing. So what would you have? Would you have an amber?
Yeah, the amber's my favorite on Bozeman Brewing.
That's what I thought.
Todd's great.
Todd is awesome. That darn him. When I did a Crap Beer podcast episode with him, he made me cry on my own podcast. His story was so beautiful and moving. I love it that you're a fan of him. I am too. I'm a fan of him and fan of what they do. Okay, so
his daughter's name is Morgan. And so when I go get a beer, I say, well, if I don't drink this beer, Morgan's not going to get any shoes. So I better drink this beer so Morgan can have shoes.
That is beautiful. You know, and on the podcast he told stories how she helped him sell beer because they started the brewery. She was born and she would be on his back while he's carrying in kegs, and she'd smile and they'd buy the beer.
Morgan's lovely, and now she's a freshman in college. You know, it's just amazing to watch the growth of that and to watch the growth of Todd. It's been a journey.
Yep, they've done a great job. Okay, so 2002, there's the space we're sitting in now that's Granny's Gourmet Donuts was, when you took it over in 2002, it was Granny Feel Good, right?
Yes.
And when you took it over, you started selling pastries and coffee and espresso.
Yes.
And what were some of the pastries you made back in the day?
Well, I really enjoyed making cinnamon rolls and orange rolls and sticky buns, and then various muffins and scones. Baking's fun. It's very precise, but it's also a lot of fun that you can take all these powders and liquids and put them together into something that's really, really good tasting and really pretty too. And the smell of sticky buns when you cook sticky buns in the oven and then you flip it over and pull it off, you get a head rush of sugar and pecans. It's just an amazing experience. I love cooking. I love baking.
Orange rolls are near to my heart. When my kids were little, usually on Saturday or Sunday, depending, I would make them orange rolls. So that's just a warm memory for me, a warm nostalgic memory. So you transitioned in roughly 2004 to donuts, but for the first couple of years, you made pastries, some pastries that sound amazing to me. Do you ever miss making those pastries?
I do. You know, there's different kinds of cooking. Not only do I miss making the cinnamon rolls and the orange rolls, I miss line cooking. It's kind of fun to stand on the line and just bang out burgers or bang out steaks and breakfast. I was really good at breakfast cooking, and I miss that kind of excitement. In a lot of ways, I'm just a line cook doing the baking roll. So I bring my line cook sensibilities to baking, and I think it's an interesting marriage.
One of the things I love is you get it a lot at home in Portland area, dive bar breakfast.
Oh, yeah.
Or you get on a greasy griddle, you can tell it came from there, and in a cold beer, and that just makes me so happy.
Oh, it's just, and in a lot of ways, breakfast cooking is harder than dinner cooking. I know it gets less prestige. I know that you make way less money at it, but I tell you, it's hard cooking done right.
It's amazing. So, so roughly 2004, you switched over to donuts. Why donuts? Why'd you move into the whole donut arena?
So Bozeman is a town that's about, right now it's 40 or 50,000, but 20 years ago it was around 30,000. We've grown a lot in the last 20 years or so. But the last donut shop in Bozeman was called High Country Donuts, and it shut down. And I noticed that Bozeman didn't have a donut shop, and I thought, well, heck, I can make donuts. How hard can it be? So I called the shop in Calgary and asked them what kind of equipment I needed to make donuts, and they said a kettle, and you'll need some rolling racks, and you'll need a proofer, and you'll need some glazer, and that's how you make donuts. So I ordered all the equipment. It was $15,000. It was all used. My kettle and my donut dropper are about 70 years old. It's called Belshaw Brothers. It's not Belshaw Brothers anymore. It's Belshaw, a subsidiary of Atomatic. Things have changed. But 70-year-old equipment works really well. And then my job was just to learn how to make donuts.
So you taught yourself how to make donuts?
Yeah, the only donut shop I've ever worked at is this one. I really would like to go and work at another donut shop because I bet I'd be surprised. I'd be like, oh, is that how you do it? Oh, wow. Man, I should have been doing that for years. That's the easy way to do it.
And you did a lot of reading and research, reading up on before when you launched.
Yeah, I've looked at a lot of donuts and donut menus and donut ideas, and it got a marvelous history, Donuts does. And I really enjoyed learning how to do all this stuff.
So you do two kinds of donuts. You do yeasted donuts and you do cake donuts. And you almost make the cake donuts almost like I would at home. Tell me how you make your cake donuts.
The thing about cake donuts is that they're made with baking powder, and baking powder is a chemical process. So what you do with cake donuts is I have 10 ingredients for my vanilla cake donuts, and they're all pretty standard: flour, sugar, baking powder, salt, nutmeg, and then eggs and milk and butter and vanilla and yogurt. And those are the 10 ingredients in my cake donuts, and I'll mix them together from scratch. It has to be pretty precise. You have to weigh out everything, and you have to have it the correct temperature. And so I love making the cake donuts. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun when you try to do it quickly. My record is 12 minutes and 43 seconds, but I can generally keep it in the 13-minute range. That goes from walking into the kitchen and popping out 60 cake donuts. That's pretty good. I defy anybody to beat that.
That's pretty amazing. So, like I said, I want people to come to Granny's Gourmet Donuts. If you get into the state of Montana, you just drive here, and get here and come. And you do your cake donuts, your yeasty donuts, but two things that are really fun that I love is your frostings and your fillings. And one of your frostings survived from the pastry time, your orange cream, right? Your orange cream frosting?
Yeah, I was inspired by the popsicle, the dreamsicle. So you have the profile of orange, vanilla, and cream together that makes a really lovely taste. And so what I'll do is I'll zest up an orange, and then I'll use some orange juice, and then I'll add some half and half, some powdered sugar, and some vanilla. And then that's all the ingredients for the vanilla buttercream, but it's killer. It's just a killer buttercream. So you fill the inside of the donut with Bavarian cream, and then you put the orange buttercream on it. It's a killer combination there.
It's an amazing one. I've had one. It's incredible. Tell me about some of the other frostings you do, because you make your own frostings, and that's the frostings fillings where your creativity shines. I want to hear about these frostings.
Well, the vanilla buttercream is pretty easy. It's just vanilla, half and half, butter, and sugar. The coffee cream has espresso powder and coffee crystals in it, so to give you a little jolt. We also make chocolate ganache. I make a lovely almond frosting for the filling. And that's a good one because, honestly, it's just ground up almonds, butter, half and half, and powdered sugar. So if anyone wants to make it, that's how you do it. It's really easy, but it's very tasty.
And you do a maple cream, right?
I use maple syrup and butter to start with the maple syrup, and then that just makes a really nice frosting for maple bars. I was really surprised when I started doing this that maple bars are so popular. There are people that come in and get a dozen maple bars or a dozen maple pecan bars, and that's all they want. It's like, I make other kinds of donuts, right?
And then occasionally you do a special featuring almond.
Yeah, I do a cherry almond one that's really good. Or you do, it's a nice one is you take an almond buttercream and you put sliced almonds on top, and then you drizzle chocolate over the top. So it's like an almond joy, only I call it almond ecstasy because we can do better than joy.
I like that. Better than joy. I think that's fantastic.
It's pretty killer.
I'm going to steal that one from you. Better than joy. We can do better than joy. Okay, just because it's so beautiful, and you do a couple variations of it. We could talk about all your donuts because every one of them I'm kind of enchanted by them. But talk to me about your cherry.
Well, during the season, I like making fresh cherry donuts. The season's so short, but I can get flathead cherries. This year I got some flathead cherries, and I pitted them and cooked them up with a little brandy, and it was just really a nice donut. Flathead cherries are well known in Montana for being really good cherries. They grow by the Flathead Lake, and that's why they call it flathead cherries. The fun thing about pitting cherries is it makes it look like a murder by the time you're done. There's just cherry juice everywhere, especially all over your hands. You look like a murderer, I gotta say.
And what do you do with them?
Well, then I'll make the almond frosting, and then I'll just top the cherries on top of that. It's really killer.
And once in a while, you've even done a Rainier cherry.
Yeah, when I can get them. With the Rainier ones, I won't cook them because they're so pretty. And I'll just top them on top. People eat with their eyes, and I like to make donuts that look good too.
And one of your most beautiful donuts visually is your strawberry donut. Talk to us about that.
The strawberry donut's going to be a Bismarck with a light vanilla glaze, and then I top it with strawberry spread. I like to use strawberry spread because it's just strawberries, and there's no chemical aftertaste or anything. It's just straight strawberries, and then you take a fresh sliced strawberry on top of that, and it's just really good. You look at a strawberry donut, and you're just happy. A lot of times when you make the donut, you want to be a little bit careful because I've seen a lot of people just put toppings on top or overwhelm the donut. But I think you need a nice balance because you want to taste the donut, and you want to taste the filling, and you want to taste the fresh strawberry. They got to be in the right amount. And so that's part of the zen of making donuts is you want a balanced donut. You want it to taste really good, and you want to taste everything, and it's got to look great too.
And I'm an equal donut opportunity eater, or however you're supposed to. I love all the donuts, but you're right. There's some people that are militant about maple bars, and then there's a whole nother donut faction of fans. People love themselves some apple fritters.
Absolutely. Well, apple fritters are they used to be like the donut stepchild, that you had donut scraps left over, and you just chopped them up, threw in some apples, and called it a donut. And but I do make a good apple fritter. What I'll do is I'll proof it, but then I won't cook it, and I'll leave it on the rack, and then as the day goes by, I can make it fresh. The thing about donuts is donuts don't improve with time. You don't say I bought a vintage box of donuts from 1960. Yes, because you need donuts to be fresh. So I endeavor to make donuts as close to service as possible and during service as possible. So this last weekend, I made 6 dozen apple fritters, but I only cooked 2 dozen for opening. And then as the day progressed, I made fresh apple fritters for folks as they came in. In fact, someone came in and they wanted an apple fritter, and I said, well, just wait a couple of minutes and I'll get you a hot one. And then I was able to do that, and they were pretty happy.
Yeah, I love apple fritters any time of year, but if the snow's falling and I come here and get a warm apple fritter, oh my gosh, there's a few things better in life, I can imagine.
If you're unhappy after that, you probably need therapy more than a donut.
Exactly right. So let's assume the kettle's hot. Tell me what happens in that 12 minutes and 43 seconds and how many donuts come out.
Okay, so you keep it all standard. So I make 60 donuts. And so what I do is I go to the back and I warm up the milk, and then I'll melt the butter, and then I'll assemble the dry ingredients, which is flour, sugar, baking powder, salt, and nutmeg. And then I'll get that mixing. And then after that, I'll make a slurry with the milk, the eggs, and the yogurt and the vanilla. And then when you make the slurry, you want to really foam it up so you get a lot of bubbles in it, so you get an airy kind of donut that's really light, that helps the flavor of it. And then you mix it for 2 minutes. You mix the slurry with the dry ingredients for 2 minutes, and then you put it in the Bell-Shaw Series B sanitary donut dropper that's 70 years old. Still works every day. Go figure. And then you drop 60 donuts, and then after you separate them and flip them, you pull them about 1.5 minutes to 2 minutes later. The temperature has to be 365 to 375. That's your sweet spot. A lot of times when you're cooking on an edge. It's the edge of time, it's the edge of temperature, and it's the edge of attention. And what you're trying to do is to do things the same way every time, just to get your consistencies, just so you can bang out the best you can.
Beautiful. And roughly 13 minutes, sometimes 12 minutes, 43 seconds, you get 60 donuts out.
Yeah, from 0 to 60 donuts. It's almost like magic. It's pretty amazing. Because, all it is a bunch of liquid and powder, and you throw it together and bang, zoom.
It's kind of like alchemy, really.
It is alchemy. It really is.
So one of the fun things is different times of the year. Every day you're open, you have a special, and that it changes. Talk about some of the specials that people might find when they stop by.
Well, I like my workers come up with great ideas for specials, and they'll tell me, hey, let's do this, or hey, let's do that. Sometimes I'll go on the internet and I'll look at other donut shops and see what they're doing, and I'll mimic them. Or I'll take their idea and kind of run with it. But I really enjoy making like a huckleberry frosting. We do a lot of weddings, so we'll do a huckleberry frosting. Or I'll make a lavender donut. We made a lovely lavender donut. We did a peanut butter pretzel one that was really good. And then we also did a s'more one that was really good. I like playing with ideas. We'll do like a mocha donut with mocha frosting. It's all each one's going to be different. I enjoy playing around with different ideas.
And some of the ones I've had, lemon blueberry.
Yeah.
I've had a chocolate mint.
Oh, that's a good one.
And sometimes you just do the mint, but sometimes you chocolate mint.
Right.
German chocolate one blew my mind.
Oh, I love the German chocolate one. Yeah.
So have you ever done anything with banana?
Oh, yeah. We did a couple, 3, right? We'll do a banana cream filling, banana cream inside, and then chocolate on top, maybe like an Elvis one. Or we'll just do a banana cream one with powdered sugar on top there. We also did one that's more like a banana pudding, like my grandmother would make, where we make the banana frosting and then we put graham cracker crumbs on top of that. That's pretty killer too.
That's amazing. Anything ever with bacon?
I've done bacon before. I tried some candied bacon. I thought that was pretty interesting. I sort of stay away from meat just because it kind of makes you a different kitchen if you start cooking with meat. But I did try hickory smoked pulled pork. Yeah, and it was hot, so that would be if I did it, I would have a little griddle there that you could just warm up the pork, put it straight on the donut. That's pretty with the maple. The maple hickory smoked pulled pork is pretty killer donut. I don't do that very often.
So I have a dear friend, Brian Yeager. He's a beer author like I am, and he's writing a donut book, and I'm going to make him listen to this podcast, tell him he has to come here. But, he loves beer and donuts, and there's this thing out there in the beer world, pastry beers that kind of, I know you love Scott at Bozeman Brewing. I think you and Scott should collaborate and make some kind of Granny's gourmet pastry beer at Bozeman.
Yeah. I'd love to do it. Yeah, that'd be great.
I'm going to advocate for that. I'm going to ring up Scott's bell and say, hey, I got an idea for you. So one of the things that's beautiful for you and for me about this place is that you get all kinds of people in here.
Yeah, it's really nice. There's a lot of places just self-select. I mean, bars select for people that are 18 or over. High-end restaurants attract older, affluent people. What I like about the donut shop is we got all mixes of ethnicities and class differences and young and old, and it's really nice to see all those people. We have a thing where we have children make their own sprinkle donuts. So what we'll do is we'll put the frosting on the donut and hand it to the young child, and the child will dip it into the sprinkles. And the children just love that. It just makes their day. They run in here and they jump on the chair and they look at me like, "Hey, dude, what are we doing? Let's go." And so we're able to do that and make it more of an experience instead of just a mundane cash transaction. It's a living thing.
Yeah, and one of the things you may not be comfortable with this word. But I believe it's true, and I mean it in the best sense of it, is you have a lot of fans. You have a lot of fans here in Bozeman. How does that feel?
It's nice. Well, it's nice, and it's responsibility, too. I mean, I'm responsible to hold up my end. When they come in here, I need to recognize them, and I need to appreciate them. And I need to do a good job for the donuts. I need to be fast. I need to make good donuts. I need to treat them with the respect that they deserve. But to me, that's the job. I'm here as a host. I want to welcome everybody, and I want to treat everybody with dignity and consideration. I don't care who you are. Sometimes the people that need the dignity and the consideration the most are the ones that get it the least. So it's important to me to treat everybody really well. That's one of the reasons I'm doing this. It's going to be nice to people.
That's beautiful. And one of the things you mentioned, we can do better than joy. We can do ecstasy. Talk to me about fulfillment. It's a value near and dear to my heart. And I sense a lot of fulfillment with you within your journey.
Well, you're not just, selling product. You're not just doing the corporate gig where you have a cash transaction. I have donuts, you have money, we're done. What you want to do is create a community. You want to be involved in people's lives. You want to make people's lives better. So I've made donuts for people, for people's weddings. I've made donuts for people's funerals. I've been to weddings. I've been to funerals. I've been to birthdays. I've made donuts for people's birthdays. My job is to be a part of the community and to enhance people's lives by the work that I do. I find it very fulfilling. I'm not just on doing something to make money. I'm not interested in that. I'm interested in being a part of a vital, amazing community and doing my part to make it vital and amazing.
And you do.
Sometimes.
Oh, come on now. I've been here a number of times, and I've seen it with my own eyes. You can, I'm a pretty intuitive person, and you can feel it. You can feel when the cook, when the chef, when the winemaker, when the brewer cares.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
When the owner cares. There's a different vibe. That's part of the magic of Hofbrau.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Don's dad, who started Hofbrau, cared.
Don Sr.
And Don took over for his dad. He and his brother took over for his dad, and they care.
Oh, absolutely.
Same thing. I've got goosebumps. But Todd Scott, there's a reason he made me cry. Yeah. He cares. He cares.
Knows what he's doing, and he cares about what he's doing.
Yeah, and that, I love Blacksmith Italian. They're just down the road from here. And, Steve and Corey, they care. And the same vibe, the same energy is here, right here in this space. And that comes out of your heart, and I celebrate that.
Well, thank you for that. But also, I have to recognize that I have amazing staff. These ladies are just amazing. It's funny because I used to work with all guys, and then all of a sudden they all left, and I'm working with all women. I was a little apprehensive at first with working with all women, but man, these guys are great. They inspire me. They work really hard. They're really smart. They keep me in focus there. Anything you do is going to be a group endeavor, and you can take all the credit for it, but you know what? These guys are doing the work too. And I'm just happy to be part of their lives too, and happy to help them through school and provide them a place of employment that isn't ugly and dreary or mean-spirited or unpleasant. I want to make a nice, happy workplace.
Yeah, what a fun thing to make donuts.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
So I rejoice in the fact that you are celebrating your staff, and it's sincere, and you really care about them. There's a book, As a Man Thinketh, James Allen, 1917. A lot of pithy wisdom in that book. But one of the things he says is, you attract to you not what you want, but what you are. And I feel like your staff is a reflection of your heart and your journey and your passion and your understanding, that we can do better than joy, that we can ecstasy, that when you sit on, the Gallatin River or the Madison River, you're kind of getting a glimpse of eternity. That when you make your donuts, there's the whole idea of the zen of donut making. I think all of that is the milieu in which your staff gets attracted and says, oh, this place resonates with my heart. My heart resonates with Robert's, and I need to be here.
Well, it's part of being human, right? I mean, so many places you're sort of denied your humanity. They'll time your bathroom breaks, or they'll say that you have to wear these specific clothes, or you have to be so regimented. When a customer comes here with a dog, all the ladies here like dogs, so give them a doggy biscuit and have them go outside and pet the dog. It's good for the dog, it's good for them, it's good for me. It's just, let's be human here.
Yep.
Let each other be human. If you're kind of quirky, okay, I like you.
Oh, well, Robert, it's been, for me, a true joy. My heart is full. What a magnificent story. Incredible donuts. I'll be back Saturday morning picking up my dozen donuts, and I'll be thrilled to get to enjoy them. I wish you all the best in the world, and thank you so much for joining us on the Culinary Treasure Podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Cheers.